Hello, Year 4, and welcome to day 22 of home learning. It is Tuesday, the 9th of February 2021. I hope you're all doing okay and you are trying really hard. I am pleased with a lot of you. However, just to warn you, I've had to go and re-deliver work that wasn't done to my satisfaction today again. You know who it is. I do not want to have to come back next week. I am going to give out prizes this week for children who are really, really impressing me with their learning, that they're doing at home. And that means doing putting the same sort of effort in as you do in school. I know it's difficult, but we're here to give you as much help as we can. Email me any of your work to be in with a chance of winning one of my spectacular prizes. Haha. Okay, so let's move on, shall we? So early morning work, exactly the same as what we usually do. So the first one, 97 divided by 9. Now I know my class, we haven't really done this yet, division. So you've done it with Mrs. Bacon a little bit. And so let's see if you can remember the method that you would use. Then number 2, calculate 262 divided by 2. And you have the counters there to help you. Number 3, Darcy collected 346 shells. She gave half each to Caleb and Asher. How many shells did they have each? If you're halving something, what are you doing? You're dividing it by 2. If 88 divided by 4 is 22, what is 880 divided by 4? So look at 88 and look at 880. What can you tell me about those numbers? How many times bigger is 880 to 88? Think about our columns, year 4. Number 5. Anita believes if I share 97 sweets between Asher, Alfie, Caleb and me, there will not be a remainder. Is there any left? Is Anita correct? Explain your reasoning. So pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so number 1, 97 divided by 9. I got the answer 10, remainder 7. Because I know 10 nines are 90 and I've got 7 left over. Calculate 262 divided by 2 and I got 131. Darcy collected 346 shells. She gave half each to Caleb and Asher. How many shells did they have each? So I did 346 divided by 2 and I came to the answer 173. Number 4. If 88 divided by 4 is 22, what is 880 divided by 4? Well, I know that 880 is 10 times bigger than 88. So I know that the answer will be 10 times bigger than 22. So 22 multiplied by 10 is 220. Number 5. If I share 97 sweets between Asher, Alfie, Caleb and me, there will not be a remainder. Is Anita correct? She is incorrect because 97 divided by 4, and I got the 4 from Asher, Alfie, Caleb and me, is 24 each and 1 left. So there is a remainder. Okay, so English time. Right. I'm hoping you're all doing really well with your English. There are some people who aren't doing their English, so I will ask you to make sure that you do every bit of learning. So, yesterday we looked at using inverted commas, didn't we? In a dialogue, we learnt the rules and then we had to put in missing inverted commas and all the punctuation. Before we go on to today's lesson, I'm just going to recap those again, okay? Because what we're going to do is we're going to use that knowledge to write our own dialogue between Hiccup and Old Wrinkly. So, our rules for punctuating direct speech. You place the inverted commas around the words which are spoken so they come out of someone's mouth. At the beginning of the speech sentence, at the beginning of what is being said, you use a capital letter. Even if it's in the middle of another sentence, the first word of what's coming out of the mouth needs to start with a capital letter. Before you close your inverted commas, use a comma, a question mark, or an exclamation mark, or a full stop to separate what was said from the speaker. And if a new person replies or speaks, you start a new line. Okay? Then I'm going to quickly go over the reporting clause. Now, the reporting clause is telling you who is saying it and how they are saying it. So it could be, get off that chair, is what's coming out of the mouth, which is your direct speech. And the reporting clause would be, Nassif shouted angrily. That Nassif shouted angrily would be the reporting clause. It could be, Nassif shouted angrily, get off that computer. Or it could be, get off, Nassif shouted angrily, the computer now. There you go. Can you see how I've put my reported clause in different places? Brilliant. Now, what did I say our task was to do today? It was that we were going to use reported clauses, we were going to use our inverted commas and all the punctuation correctly in writing our own dialogue. So, what I would like you to do is I would like you to have a look at what I've started. Mine is only the start. So, Hiccup went to sit on the front step next to his grandfather, Wrinkly. Hello, young man. How did your initiation ceremony go yesterday? He asked. Can you see? I've got my opening inverted commas, and my first word begins with a capital letter, and I have a question mark and closing inverted commas, and he asked is my reporting clause. Well, I got a dragon, Hiccup answered, if that is what you were asking, but not the one I wanted. There you go, I've put an embedded reported clause in there. Well, I got a dragon, comma, closing inverted commas, and then I put Hiccup answered in the middle. If that is what you were asking, but not the one I wanted, if does not begin with a capital letter because it carries on after dragon. Wrinkly looked at Hiccup and smiled. What's up with your dragon? What's wrong with my dragon? Hiccup shouted. What's wrong with it? Wrinkly looked concerned and put his arm around Hiccup's shoulders and whispered, It's okay. Everyone knows you were not going to get that real sea dragon. Can you see how I've tried to put the reporting clause in different positions throughout my dialogue? Can you see that each person who's speaking is starting on a new line? If you need to go through and listen to it again, then you do that. You can go back. So what I want you to do is I want you to write today's date and the target. And then I would like you to write your own dialogue using inverted commas, everything in its correct place. Does everyone understand that? Brilliant. So pause the video now. Okay, so maths. We have been learning about area. Who can remember what area is? And how do you find the area of shapes? We've been learning all about that, haven't we? So let's see if we can do this without any of the squares and things. So Zehan is choosing which carpet tile is to use to cover the space below. He wants the tiles to cover the area completely. Which one should he use? And can you explain your answer? I think he should use B. Am I right? No. He should use A. Why should he use A? Let's see. Yeah? Zehan should use tile A because it is a right angle shape and will cover each corner. Tile B has round edges, so would leave lots of gaps. That's a really good explanation to that question. Okay, so we'd use tile A because it's got right angles and it wouldn't leave any gaps at all, whereas shape B has. Okay, if you have a look at the green square, that's your reference square, so you've got to sort of use that size and work out. Imelda has started designing a six-sided shape using squares. The surface of her shape will have an extra 12 squares. Use the reference square to work out how many squares need adding. Then find two ways to complete Imelda's shape. So how many of the green squares will fit into this one? And how many more squares do they need to add if they have an area of 12? Okay then. So I thought that shape would have 6 of those squares, so I would need to add another 6. Now I've come up with a couple of different shapes. Do you think you could come up with any more? Now, look at the reference square, that peachy browny colour, and you need to work out which of those shapes do you think A, B or C is the odd one out. So have a go and have a look. Which one do you think is the odd one out? I think B is the odd one out because it has an area of 9 squares, whereas A and C have an area of 8 squares. So that's the reason why it's the odd one out. Okay, you have a worksheet looking like similar to this. It will have Tuesday on. Can you get going with those, please? And have a really good try. Okay, so it is our Firework Maker's Daughter for Reading Workshop. you need to get your chapters ready, please. So we're going to read chapter 5. She pulled herself up with shaking arms and stepped inside. The floor was baking hot and the air was hardly breathable. She walked on, deeper into the earth, deeper than the moonlight went, and heard nothing but silence, and saw nothing but dark rock. Harsh, barren walls rose to left and right. She felt them with her bleeding hands. Then the tunnel opened out into a great cavern. She had never seen anything so gloomy and empty of life. What does the word barren mean? Yeah, there's nothing there. What about a great cavern? It's a space like a cave. And her heart sank because she had come all the way and there was nothing here. She sank to the floor, and as if there was a signal, a little flame licked out of the rocky wall for an instant and went out. Then another in a different place, then another. Then the earth shook and groaned, and with a harsh grating sound the rocky wall tore itself open, and suddenly the cavern was full of light. Lila sat up astonished as red fire and flame licked and crackled at the rocky roof. All of a sudden the grotto was alive with movement, as 1,000 fire imps swarmed upwards to dash themselves against the rock and smash into 1,000 more, as a wide carpet of boiling lava spread from side to side, as the clang and clash of mighty hammers and anvils rang with the rhythm of a great fire dance. The cavern was full of light and noise. Thousands upon thousands of little fire spirits toiled and blazed and swung hammers, and ran to and fro with handfuls of sparks, and swarmed against the rocky wall till it melted and slid downwards like soft wax. Then the greedy creatures plunged their red hands into it and lifted up the bubbling sulphur to their tiny mouths and ate until another mass of rock slid down and smothered them. And then into the heart of the light and the fire and the noise leapt Rasvani himself, the great fire fiend, whose body was a mass of flame and whose face a mask of scorching light. Thousands of fire imps scattered as she landed, and even the blazing flames bowed down to him, and so did Lila. In a voice like the roar of a forest fire, Rasvani spoke. By what right have you come to my grotto? She swallowed hard. It was difficult to breathe, because she seemed to be taking fire into her lungs as well as air. I want to be a firework maker, she managed to say. He laughed a great laugh. You? Never. And what do you want from me? Royal sulphur, she gasped. At that he slapped his sides and laughed even harder, and a chorus of jeers and shrieks of merriment burst from all of the fire imps. Royal sulphur? Did you hear that? Oh, that's good, that's funny. Well, speak, girl. Have you the 3 gifts? Lila could only shrug and shake her head. She could hardly speak. I don't know what they are, she said. So what were you going to exchange for the royal sulphur? He roared. I don't know. You were going to give nothing in exchange. She had nothing to say. She bowed her head. Well, you've come this far, said the fire fiend, and there's no going back. Now you're here, you must walk in the flames like every other firework maker. I expect you brought some magic water from my cousin, the goddess of the lake. You brought nothing for me, but I don't suppose you've forgotten to take care of yourself. Better drink it quickly. I've got nothing, Lila gasped. I didn't know about magic water or the three gifts. I just wanted to be a firework maker. And I'll be a good one, Razvani. I invented self-igniting crackle dragons and shimmering coins. I've learned everything my father could teach me. It's all I want, to be a firework maker like him. But Razvani merely laughed. Show her the ghosts, he cried, and clapped his blazing hands. Instantly a crack shivered its way down the rock wall, and out of the opening came a procession of ghosts, each attended by fire demons. The ghosts were so pale and transparent that Lila could hardly see them, but she heard them wailing. Beware, look at me. I came without the three gifts. Alas, take warning from me. I hadn't worked at the craft and I wasn't ready. Maiden turned back. I was arrogant and headstrong. I didn't seek the water from the goddess, and I perished in the flames. Wailing and weeping, the ghosts passed across the lake of fire. And vanished into a crack in the opposite wall. Right, you've got a couple of pages that I would like you to read yourself. Once you have read them, let's see if we can go through some of the answers to these questions. What I've noticed when I've been reading your answers, you are just writing the answer, so it doesn't necessarily make sense. I asked you and I showed you how to write the answer to a question because I didn't want you to write the question down and waste your time. So, number 1, what creatures turn up? I would answer the question. So let's have a look in the text and let's see what creatures turn up, shall we? Right. Those fire imps. Fire imps turned up when Lila walked into the cavern. Number 2, what does Razvani look like? So find out where it says about Razvani. In the text it said Razvani looked like, and you explain. So you've got 5 questions there to do. You then, when you have finished, you're going to summarise Lila's time in the mountain. So we have done this before in class. You need to bullet point the main parts of her time in the mountain. So at first she climbed the mountain and there was nothing. She felt as though she was in danger because of the flames. She thought they were laughing at her. And so you need to continue the list of the main points and then you write those main points into at least a paragraph. Okay? So you need to pause the video now and do that. Okay, so history. Yesterday we started to learn about the Roman soldier, didn't we? Yeah? So how would you become a Roman soldier? Can you tell someone? Okay, so you had to apply, didn't you? If you remember rightly, how old did you have to be? At least 20? Could you be married? No, you couldn't. And you had to be a Roman. Yeah? Otherwise, you would have to be an auxiliary. So not only did we have to carry a lot of equipment, remember the equipment and everything that you had, but training was hard for a legionnaire. He had to march 30 kilometres 3 times a month wearing his armour, which weighed 20 kilograms. Now think of a bag of sugar. He had to do a drill once a day, twice if he was a recruit. So if he was new, he had to do certain things. He had to learn to build camps, swim, sling stones. That means put stones on a catapult sort of thing, or throw them. He had to ride, mount, and dismount, get off a horse, fully armed with a shield and no stirrups. He had to learn how to use a sword, a spear, and fight mock pretend battles with weapons which had covered tips for safety. So, what fighting techniques did they learn? So, I've got some pictures and some information about the different fighting techniques. So, there was the repel cavalry, and this was if they were in defense. If the enemy was coming at them, if you have a look at the picture, okay, so there will be, it's to combat a cavalry charge. So the soldiers form a line with the men at the front crouching down with their shields in front and their spears stick out of the gaps. The men behind put their shields over the top of the men in front and have their spears ready to throw. The spears would stop horses from running at the soldiers, often causing them to retreat. So if they were getting charged upon by someone on horses, the cavalry, the spears would stop the horses because they would be scared. Those retreating would then knock into the cavalry behind them, causing like dominoes as they fall over. Okay? And that would make them easy target for those who are archers, which had the bows and arrows. Right, so here we have what you call the wedge, which is an attacking fighting technique. So this is when the Romans were going against their enemies, okay? And they used the wedge to divide the enemy. So as they were going towards it, they would have this formation, and it's like a V. So the centurion is at the front of the V, and the legionaries from the sides form the sides of the V. They have to stay close together to stop the enemy from breaking the line. As the wedge advances, more soldiers join on at the ends to divide the enemy even further. So the V would go in the middle of the enemy and it would divide them up. And it would break the formation. Here we have what we call the tortoise. And this is a defensive technique. So if the enemy was coming for the Romans, they could form the tortoise. And when was it used? To advance, to move forward, but remain protected from any of the enemy's spears or arrows. You can see that the shields were on the top, they were to the side. So the tortoise is square. The men at the front hold their shields in front of them. The men at the sides hold their shields to the sides. And the men in the middle hold their shields above them, and the men had to move in close formation so they stayed really tight to ensure that the shields were touching so that no missiles or swords or anything could get in and injure any of those soldiers. So then we have the orb. And this is another defensive technique. And it was used if part of the army had been split off from the main group, or if it was being surrounded by the enemy. So it's a bit like a circle, okay? The legionaries form a circle around the officers and the archers. These were the most important people, using their shields as protection. And it was basically a desperate last stand. If they felt they were getting they were going to die or they were getting beat, they would stay like this, so it would help them to defend the most important people who were in the middle of that orb. So, how did they keep so many men under control? As you've seen, the Roman army was huge. How do you think its leaders managed to keep so many people under control, as in being well behaved? Okay, well, there was punishments and rewards. So discipline was very harsh. Centurions carried a vine stick, which they used to beat soldiers who had disobeyed an order. The fines were also common, but there were much worse punishments. So, if someone hadn't obeyed what they were told to do, hadn't done what they were told to do, they would be beaten with a vine stick. They could also be fined, but they were the lighter of the options. Deserters and soldiers who left their posts. So a deserter is someone who runs away from the army, or someone who left their post or fell asleep while on lookout, were beaten to death by their fellow soldiers. A particularly horrible punishment was decimation, where every 10th man in a cohort, and that was chosen randomly, was executed by his comrades. However, on a more cheerful note, for bravery there were awards for different ranks, such as medals, arm and neck bands or torques. Gold crowns and silver spears were given to the officers. So, now you'll probably think, what else did these Roman soldiers do? So they didn't spend all their time fighting in major battles. So when they weren't fighting, they built forts, which are like castles, bridges and roads. And when they were on a campaign, they built a camp, fortified with banks and ditches at the end of each day's march. So they would have a ditch and they would have they could see the enemy coming closer. But they did have time for relaxation as well. What kind of activities do you think they did when they were off duty? This picture shows part of what is left of Hadrian's Wall. Now that's past Newcastle, further north on your way to Scotland, and it is a huge wall, and it was built by the Romans between England and Scotland, and it was for the Romans really to hide behind because it was a defensive wall. So, what did the Romans do when they were not invading countries? They wrote letters, they drank beer, they did some art, and they made some pottery, and you can see they had big Roman baths, very much like a swimming pool now. So, your task. You are going to imagine that you are applying to become a Roman soldier. In your pack, you have a writing frame, and that will help you to do that. But you need to write a letter to explain. Okay, they've got little headings and things for you on the writing frame. You do not write on that, you either write in your book or on a piece of paper, whichever you have. So, this is my application letter. My name, Mrs. Platten, my address, my nationality, and I'm the Roman, and I am single. Remember, I can't be married. And then I've started my first paragraph. Dear sir, I am writing to ask if I can join the Roman army. I am interested in becoming a Roman soldier because I want to help invade other countries and take over Europe. I want to be able to work as part of a team and show my allegiance to Julius Caesar. So allegiance means support. If I was to be successful in being a Roman soldier, then I will be able to show how strong and confident I am and that I am able to fight and represent my country. So there's my very first paragraph. Obviously, you would write all of yours, not just the first paragraph. Okay? So what I would like you to do is I would like you to use the writing frame to write your own letter of application. So you need to write today's date, Tuesday the 9th of February 2021, and your target, I can write a letter of application. Right, okay then. So once you have done that, your time is your own. I would like you to read your book and practice your times tables. Have a good night and I'll see you tomorrow. Finish every piece of work. Okay? Goodbye.